How do you feel this year at this time compared to where we were a year ago?
No, I think we've made a lot of progress, and the fact that we have vaccines and boosters that are keeping most of us safe, I feel a lot better than I did at this time last year. We still got a ways to go to get out of this pandemic, but I think we've made significant progress in our state over the last year, and I'm so grateful for the people of North Carolina for all they've done and for trusting me to do this job. And I'm taking it seriously every day. And you know, every day I get up thinking about what I can do to help make this state better. And I'm just humbled and honored to do this job, leading the state that I love so much.
Obviously, you're not going to sit and tell me you regret something about a decision you made. I mean, I know better doing this for 20 some odd years. But what were some? Is there something that you look back on that either you would have done differently or was one of the toughest decisions you've had to make throughout this pandemic?
Well, I'm still deeply disappointed that we've yet to expand Medicaid, particularly in the middle of a pandemic, particularly when you have more than 1 million North Carolinians without health insurance. It's something wrong with that we just haven't pushed the yes button and allowed those people to be insured. We made significant inroads on this in this budget process, and we were this close to getting it in this budget. I do believe that we have a good chance to do it when we come back in the spring. But it is a very frustrating, it is probably the most frustrating part of my time as governor, that North Carolina has not yet made this very basic, smart decision to draw down those federal dollars.
So you were this close to in the budget process. So take me behind the scenes here if you can with those meetings with Speaker Moore and Senate President Pro Tem Phil Berger.
It's really frustrating because I believed that earlier in the term that we had the House Republicans who were willing to do this, but not the Senate Republicans. And then as we went through the budget process, we got the Senate Republicans, but then the House Republicans turned around on the issue. And just trying to put all of it together, all of the Democrats were ready to do this. Many rank and file Republican legislators were ready to do this because they were hearing from their rural hospitals that are on the edge. They were hearing from local government officials that so many working North Carolinians didn't have health insurance. Either they're working a couple of jobs for a company and they don't work full time, so they don't qualify for health insurance, or it's a small business that can't afford to give them health insurance, or they make too much money to qualify for Medicaid and not enough to qualify for federal subsidies under the Affordable Care Act, so they just can't afford health insurance. And there they are working, doing their part in this economy in the middle of a pandemic with no extra state tax dollars. We had this worked where we could all use the federal dollars here. And we were this close, but I think just for political reasons, unfortunately, on the House side with a number of the Republican leaders, that it was just not to be in this budget. And I had to, I believe we pushed things as far as we could in this budget process, and in balance, the good outweighed the bad in this budget. And so I was pleased with the historic budget deal that we did cut.
I keep hearing this maybe next spring or in the short session next year. Is the belief that it'll be after Republican primaries that some of these?
We heard that straight out, that people were concerned about their primaries and that they would get a run from the right criticizing them for supporting Medicaid expansion, even when research shows that Republicans support Medicaid expansion. The state of Oklahoma voted for Medicaid expansion. Utah voted for it. Missouri voted for it. These are red states. So the political problems should not have existed, but unfortunately in people's minds they were important enough to not expand Medicaid, and that's deeply disappointing, but we're not going to stop. And there is a coalition, a bipartisan coalition of healthcare, business, governmental, nonprofit, faith leaders who are ready to get this done. It's a moral issue, I think. And we live in the richest country in the world, and you got people working hard and they don't have health insurance. There's something fundamentally wrong with that. And we got to figure out the best ways to get them that health insurance.
So this budget did not have Medicaid expansion. Teacher pay was nowhere near what you would want. There's policy of it that you strongly disliked. In fact, you think might be illegal or unconstitutional. Those all sound like things that any other time you would have vetoed the budget. Was it simply because of the money from the federal government, the surplus, that you knew you had to sign this budget?
So historic investments in infrastructure, finally getting high-speed internet access to all parts of the state, historic investments in clean water, strong investments in our community colleges and universities. And yes, not enough for our educators, but bonuses and 5% increases, all of that together. And there were a number of tax cuts for everyday people. I didn't like the tax breaks for the wealthiest among us, which they put in this as well. But on balance, it was the right way to go. And I also think I could have vetoed and have held the veto, but for this budget, to what end? I'm not sure what Republican leadership would have done. Potentially could have walked away. This was the right thing to do, was to sign this budget. I got out early and told Democrats and Republicans in the legislature that I was ready to sign this budget, and let's start investing and move the state forward. I thought we had pushed it as far as we could.
Governor, it's good to see you. Happy holidays. Thank you so much.
Happy holidays to you.
And recently I had the chance to talk with him, a rare chance, one-on-one in person. We talked about things like Medicaid, and many parts of those interviews aired elsewhere on my other shows. But we saved one topic for this week in particular, a huge trial that's going on. And we heard another rarity from any politician and the governor, a regret.
Well, thank you, sir. Oh, yeah.
It's the first time in some 18 months the governor is granted a sit-down in-person interview. We're in the back den of the executive mansion. It was recorded in December. But we knew the trial of our state's political maps drawn by the Republican legislature would take place this month, so I wanted to hear his take. Cooper has a long history in North Carolina politics. Governor since 2017, Attorney General from 2001 to 2017, and in the legislature from 1987 to 2001. It's a time in the legislature when I wanted to hear more about his role then, having an impact to this very day.
As we sit here, elections are essentially on hold. Finally, we wait for this. One thing you cannot do is veto maps, which ironically, for people that are new to this state, you were in the legislature, in the state Senate, part of this process that does not allow the governor to veto it. Do you regret that now looking back, that here you are today and you can't veto it?
You don't know how hard I had to fight in the legislature to get a governor a veto at all. We were the last state in the country that did not have gubernatorial veto. And for a while in the legislature, we simply couldn't get it passed. So the way to get it passed was to require some things not be able to be vetoed by the governor, like redistricting, like local legislation. And also, the override requirement is one of the weakest in the country, in that you can override a governor's veto with 3/5 of those present, not 3/5 of the body. So it is what it took to get it passed. And I'm glad that as governor, I have it. I think governors should have it. I think it should be a little bit stronger. But as you can see, I've been able to use it, I think, to good effect. And I think the things that I've decided to veto have been legislation that would have turned our state in the wrong direction. So I think I've been able to keep a good balance here and have been able to negotiate some very good legislation along with vetoing legislation that I did not think was right for the people of the state.
When you were in the legislature then, and Democrats were all the way through 2010, had the opportunity to change redistricting in this state. Do you regret not being able to?
Yes, I do. We should have. We should have created a nonpartisan redistricting commission that is independent. We should have. And I do regret that. And ironically, Republican leaders at that time, who are now leaders in the legislature, were calling loudly for an independent redistricting commission. And now that they have the authority to draw these districts, they have abandoned that as well. So yeah, we should have done that. And I still hope we can do that. And I have vowed that when Democrats take back the legislature, if I'm governor then, we're going to do it. And we should.
As we await further court action on redistricting, COVID remains top of mind. More than 150 news conferences now since the beginning. But a debate remains over government intervention.
Where do you see that point, particularly when it comes to government, role in this, whether it's the emergency declaration or mask mandates, which I know are largely on the local level here now, but how are you going to determine when that end is? I mean, a lot of people have questioned whether we should still have an emergency declaration.
Well, we have to acknowledge first that we're in a far different place this year than we were last year, because as you and I sit and talk right now, we are a year and 1 day away from the first vaccines being rolled out. And when you look at the fact that we have about almost 74% of North Carolina adults who have had at least one shot, we are in a much different space in protecting people. And because vaccines provide the best protection, it makes it less likely that you're going to contract COVID, but we know you still can. But if you do, if you've been vaccinated and boosted, far less chance that you're going to be severely impacted by it. So we start out with that. Secondly, most people know what to do. They know that when you're inside in a public place and it's crowded, that you ought to have a mask on to protect yourself. Some people are making the choice not to, but people know what to do. So we're in a very different place as to what government needs to do. We started this pandemic, we didn't even have PPE. We didn't even have enough masks for people to have one. We had no vaccine, and we had a virus that was tearing through the population and causing great strain on our hospitals. Now we have all of that under control. People are still getting sick. People are still dying. You talk to any healthcare worker in a hospital, and they will tell you they have a high level of frustration because we have a lot of people, the vast majority of whom are unvaccinated, who are still getting very sick and dying in this state. We've had more than 19,000 people in North Carolina die of COVID. We're finished with this pandemic. Unfortunately, it's not quite finished with us. We want to get this virus to an endemic level, one that is more under control, one where the vast majority of the people is vaccinated. That's where we want to be. But I'm proud of the progress we made. I think things are so much different now from when they were.
Before we left, I had to leave the conversation on a light note. If you don't know, the Coopers love pets. And this holiday season, they added to the family, at least temporarily.
All right, I have to ask about the kittens.
So we have Gimli, Adelaide, and Jenny Any Dots for the kittens. Violet's the dog. We are fostering Biscuit and Oliver, two great little kittens. One's 3 months, one's 4 months. Please call. We're glad to let you adopt them. We want to find good families for them, and we encourage families to foster. We love pets. All of our pets are rescue pets, and they just help make life more complete.
Is it not hectic upstairs, though?
Yeah, a little hectic. It is that, and particularly when the 3 cats are really unsure about these 2 new kitties who have come in and interloped into their territory. But it has made for some interesting times upstairs.